So welcome to all of you, and hope more are coming. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Peter Gruen, and I am the chair of the Advonet group. So I'm very happy to be here with you. 2 or 3 points of housekeeping to start with. Obviously on my screen, I can't see everybody. And I'm not necessarily going to keep up with the chat, but if Philip can, that will be helpful. If there are any chat messages I need to be aware of. In terms of the running order, I think you've all seen the program, and the afternoon is dedicated really to, I hope, all of us agreeing the significance and importance of advocacy and why we want to develop the network and the expertise and the experience, the innovation, the creativity around advocacy between ourselves. Nahida Hussain is, I think, probably well known to all of you. Those of you who are eagle-eyed will have spotted that there is one small word missing from the title she had up to now, and that word is interim. And I'm very pleased to be able to share with you that Nahida has now been appointed substantively to the post of Advocacy Director. And we're very pleased that she is there in that capacity. And having suitably embarrassed you now, Nahida, over to you for your contribution, please.
Thank you so much, Peter, for that wonderful introduction. So, hi everyone, I'm Nahida. I won't focus so much on the title just because Peter has. I just wanted to say a big thank you to Mary and Tina for a kind of deep insight into what advocacy is. I am going to talk a little bit about advocacy before we talk about the fund, but I guess that's just examples of how advocacy is part and parcel of our lives. We might not recognize it, identify it as advocacy, but hopefully these initiatives that we intend on launching will be able to kind of bridge the gap and show where those advocacy needs exist. So I'll start with talking about advocacy. So what is advocacy? We've talked about it. We've talked about how it promotes equality, social justice, social inclusion, and human rights. Both Mary and Tina also spoke about it being person-centered and being about the individual and not grouping it to a particular group. You may have similarities or identify as a certain group, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your needs are the same. So being person-centered in advocacy is really, really important. It aims, again, one of the biggest aims is to empower somebody to be able to have their own voice and to influence decisions that are made about their lives. It also recognizes self-advocacy, how important and how powerful that can be as part of encouragement, motivation, and drive for people to be able to speak out and speak on their own behalf with the support and confidence that their voice is being heard. It involves informing people of their rights, which links in with the empowering. So once somebody is informed of their rights, they're in a better position to make an informed choice or decision about their care, their treatment, about having their voice heard in any aspect of their life. It also allows us to, having advocacy in our lives allows us to influence the decisions that are made about us, again, because of that direct, individual, personal contribution from the person who is affected the most. Okay. Next slide. Okay. No, can you go back to the other one? No, this is our technical issues now. Yeah, this one's fine. Okay, so that's advocacy. There'll be an opportunity to ask further questions. what I want you to try and do whilst I'm explaining the purpose of the fund is try and make that connection with the areas that you currently work in, with the groups of people that you work with. And when you're thinking about the grants, when you're thinking about how you can use them to reach out to those people who need us the most, how you can make that connection with advocacy. So obviously the purpose of the fund is to get advocacy to where it's most needed, but we've not been able to reach them. So for those of you that were at the event, we talked about how statistics tell us that, you know, we see so many people, but what about the people that are not part of those statistics? What happens to them? You're the specialist in those areas. You have that information. So this is where you need to make that connection. You can help Advonet to become more inclusive. So we reach out to those people that we haven't been able to reach out. And all in all, by working together, we help the city to become more inclusive. Okay, so how is it going to work? So you describe the challenge and tell us how advocacy is the answer. So a little bit about what we've talked about already. It's your specialism, it's the people that you work with, it's having that connection, what advocacy is, how it empowers people, and how the challenges that you're facing can be connected to that. Training and infrastructure support is available from us. So what we're saying that we're an established advocacy organization who deliver regular training to advocates, to other organizations. We could do the same for you. We can provide training, whether that's awareness training, whether it's how to, what approaches you need to take as an independent advocate, if you were considering creating peer support groups. Excuse me. That's something that we can offer as part of this package. So you bring your idea and we will fill out the forms together. So we'll make it happen. So that's us working together as a city. We're not just talking about the objective being inclusive. This is an inclusive approach to how we're going to do this. You're not going to be left alone to do anything. You'll get the support. If you need support filling in the forms, we can help you do that. And then, you know, you can submit your idea and you're on your way. Monitoring. So what does monitoring mean? Excuse me, I'm just going to get a drink, sorry. So monitoring is collecting data. So we need to know whether it's working or not, whether it's working for you, whether you're reaching your objective, whether those purposes are being met. So how are you currently doing that? What measures are you using? What measures are we using? We can have individual conversations. Let's see what works for us. Let's see what works for you. And then collaboratively, what works together. So next July, we'll meet to hear about the difference your project has made. So who can apply? Charities, community groups with a turnover of under 300,000 a year. Support groups who aren't formal charities, but have a record of working to support disadvantaged and minoritized communities. Groups who work in a more deprived more deprived communities or have ideas to use who advocacy to improve the lives of local people. Okay, so if you're working within a deprived community and you have got ideas, but you haven't yet had the opportunity due to funds or other barriers that you were facing, what's your plan? How do you think you can deliver advocacy to that particular marginalized group or that deprived community? Bring those forward. Now, because of the nature of you know, interest and how much funding there is available, we can only accept one application per individual or informal group during each calendar year. Now, if, for example, at the end of that calendar year, you know, we demonstrated that you are making a difference, you needed to continue with that funding, and there is a possibility to extend that into the second year. But in every given calendar year, you can only have one application per group. Okay, so our priorities: new advocacy solutions that help people to be more included. So advocacy that helps people be more included, overcoming barriers caused by differences. Sorry, is somebody trying to say something? I can't see anyone, so. No? Okay. So advocacy that helps people to be more included, overcoming barriers caused by differences in language, culture, disability, etc. So again, that specialism that you bring, how are we going to be able to make that difference? Support for friends, relatives, carers, to be informal advocates, to speak up in health and care and safeguarding and other formal processes. So that empowerment that's going to come through this process, that peer support, that potential, the potential skill set that you're creating amongst the people that you're working with, your peers, your family members, the awareness that's raising throughout the city. Smaller support groups who aren't yet charities. So what we will fund, so this is an example. So a group of carers of people with dementia from Eastern Europe find themselves unable to understand what is happening to their relatives and why. The group arranges self-advocacy training for itself. Links with carers leads are established. Unmet needs of carers from Eastern Europe are communicated to the council and health providers. The difference that advocacy and the project made to the lives of all involved is captured. So friend, carer, advocacy kits from people from gypsy and traveller communities going through safeguarding process, that's a separate example. Another example of self-advocacy, training event for deaf people, a budget of 500 to 10,000, available in a total each year for 2 years. So these are those small ideas on perhaps those different areas that is your focus point, that you want to develop and see grow and make Leeds a better place to live in. And together we can reach out to all of these different areas. So this is not limited, these are just examples, just so that you can perhaps place them to where you're currently, where your thinking sits at. Okay, so things like you might be working with a group of people who currently have rent as a struggle area that perhaps you need to create some workshops, or there's some signposting that's required, or perhaps a peer support group. So similarly, volunteer expenses. Sorry. So with this is where you can apply some of those costs too, with the rent, with volunteer expenses, administration, ongoing projects, accreditation. So if you needed to have some training, some specific training that would enable you.
So I've seen one question in the chat about whether it's only for Leeds groups.
The work would have to be work with citizens of Leeds, because it is about developing advocacy for people in Leeds. But because we recognise that lots of charities and so on will be different and have different structures, it may be if the work's happening in Leeds, but is linked to a group of people in Wakefield, that wouldn't be a barrier.
Okay, so again, what that fund can support is to access services. So like, for example, following bereavement, change of circumstance, etc. Any kind of localized support in the community, help people from new communities to understand the system, people that are new to the country, or perhaps don't know processes and need some familiarization with, they have children, the children need to go to school. So they don't know how the education system works and benefits, etc., anything that they're entitled to, food vouchers, etc., things like that. Just that kind of that basic human need that as a citizen of Leeds that we sometimes take for granted, but perhaps when you're part of a marginalised group and you're not informed, you can't be involved in that. For example, the fuel crisis cost, people may not understand that. How do they manage debt? How do they manage their finances? What support do they need? Is there a particular group that would benefit from having something in place? Identifying bad landlords. This is something that we come across in advocacy quite regularly. And again, if people are not aware that they can raise their voice, some people might live in bad situations unnecessarily for longer. And this is a really important one, the last one, like culturally appropriate support. And this is where we as a city come together and make sure it's tailored to that particular cultural group or whoever it is that we're working with. So again, going back to what Mary and Tina were saying about it being person-centered. It's not about whether you're new to the country, old to the country. What matters is you're here, you're in Leeds, we're all equal to each other, and we need to know what we're entitled to, but how we can get that entitlement. So this is obviously what this fund will allow us to do, and in turn for Leeds to be the most inclusive place to be in.
As I'm listening, I think the big difference with this initiative is, unlike others, where you're left to your own devices, you have 40 pages of an application to fill out, and you either can or you can't. Here, it's not going to be that type at all, and somebody from Advonet will help you if you're struggling to complete an application. That's a real difference. I have one question, Nahida, one clarification. You mentioned that it's one application per group or per individual per calendar year. Is that one successful application? So if you're applying and you're not successful, can you apply again or not?
Is it okay if I take that one?
Of course.
We gave quite a lot of thought to this.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the collaborative way that we'll be supporting organizations to be making their applications, we will just have 2 rounds. A round that will start today, this week, and conclude with the panel making decisions in October, which we'll explain a little bit more later on about, and then another one the next year. So because of that collaborative way of looking at funding applications with partners, we would hopefully be having those conversations about, okay, perhaps this could be changed this way or that way, or perhaps you could join with this other partner who has this idea. So that would be teased out as part of our intensely collaborative submission process. But once that had finished, we wouldn't have another opportunity for a new idea to go through until the next round, which would be a year later.
That's very clear and very helpful. Thank you, Philip. And thank you, Nahida. So I'm moving on, if I may, Philip stands between you and the break, which is a nice way of introducing Philip. But really very important contribution, and one that you want to hear about how the application process works and what support there is, and any Q&A that Philip can help with. So if I may hand over to Philip.
Thank you, Peter. So I think really what I'm doing here is summarizing a bit of what you, Peter, and Nahida have already said. We had a very inspirational and helpful and successful event in May, where we asked people how they thought the awards process should work, how we should focus our energies And a really clear consensus came back from all the people who attended from the various tables, and we've followed that as our template. And so it's just really summarizing how the process is going to work, so it's as collaborative as possible. And all that we ask for really is that somebody comes with an idea and we can then work with them in turning it into a project. So the call is out for a good advocacy idea that needs funding. As has been explained, we will have grants of between £500 and £10,000 available for community groups wanting to boost advocacy. We have a total of £25,000 to spend this year and £25,000 the following year, which the board of the Advonet group had identified as resources that it wanted to commit to spreading advocacy further and embedding it more in the city and supporting it to develop and grow. What we're looking for is advocacy that helps people to be more included and to overcome barriers. Projects can be quite simple. They can be support for relatives, friends, carers, to be informal advocates. Because one of the things that we're really aware of is that sometimes advocacy can end up feeling like a very technical thing. But what we've heard from everybody who's spoken today is probably everyone does a bit of advocacy in their life, and we want to recognize and support and help people focus that better. And we also want to support smaller groups that might not be charities, might have ambitions to support the communities they're working with better, to use advocacy to support themselves and others to make changes in their lives. The application process, again, this was really informed by the event that we had in May. We wanted to make it as simple as possible. So we're about to distribute, and we'll do that after the session today, a flyer, making this as simple as possible. But really, we just need to hear the idea in whatever way works for the group that has the idea. So a short video clip or an audio clip, an email, a telephone call. And once we've had that, within 7 working days, we'll make contact and begin to look at, okay, that's advocacy. How's it going to work? What kind of budget do you need? What are some of the practical things that you'd want to think about? If people want to complete the application themselves, obviously that wouldn't be a problem. But our thought was more that what we could do is ask the questions, produce a document, and then check with people that this collaboratively produced document really does sum up the key issues about what the project's there for and what it will cost. And then that's as simple as we thought we could make it. But it's really important that ownership of that submission lies with the project. So we would bounce ideas around with applicants. We'd say, what about this or that? We'd think about other things that we might be aware of or other connections to other organizations. But ultimately, the decision about what the proposal is would be that of the organization or the informal organization that was putting in the bid. Okay, so the closing date originally was the end of September, and it still is. But because we've developed a bit more that concept of working really collaboratively, we felt to start cold with an application and have it in for October, we really would need to say that the 15th of September was the closing date. That would mean that there would still be a couple of weeks to work together to make sure that people were really happy with their application. And then the applications would go to a panel, which we asked for volunteers to be on that panel at the event that we held in May. And we have, I think, about 10 or 11 people who have offered to take part in the process, of the decision-making process. and they'll then be making recommendations, and fingers crossed, we'll end up with the right number of applications that fit really well with the money that we've got, and we can hope that everything will get through. It might be at that point some suggestions are made by the panel about joining together some of the proposals. So that would be something that could happen at that point. Again, it would be down to what the parties involved wanted to do. But I suppose we want to carry on with that idea of being creative and collaborative all the way through the process. Then the Board of Trustees of the Advonet Group would make a final decision based on the recommendations from the panel in October 2022. And then by December, we would hope to be ready to start with the projects. And I know, again, from our own experiences of applying for small pots of funding, sometimes that bit, the space in between not knowing whether you've got the money, finding out that you have got the money, and then having to get started could be really difficult. So we're, again, really committed to working collaboratively all the way through. So that relationship is a dynamic one between Advonet and whoever is getting the funding, who's going to be delivering some of that advocacy. And Bushra is going to explain a little bit more about that later on. So again, we're really committed to making a success of this project because it feels it's a way we can make sure there is more advocacy for more people. And we can also learn from the success of your projects and others' projects about how advocacy that we offer can be more inclusive in future. So it feels there's an awful lot that everybody can gain from this project, and we're really excited to see what happens next. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's been really interesting to hear the speakers, and welcome to everybody who's here. It's really good to look at the different types of services and how hopefully advocacy can impact them all, and hopefully you'll all be applying. So, but as Nahida mentioned earlier, once the funding has been awarded, that's not the end of the support that we can give you. We can still continue to help you to deliver the activity or project that you've chosen to do. And the ways we can do that is that we would provide you with a named contact at Advonet who you can call for support and guidance, but also they will work with you to help you deliver the project that you've applied for what you've applied the funding. So they can give practical assistance around things like if it involves training, they can help you to put together an action plan and then look at the practicalities of what you need to deliver that action plan. So things like if you need to put training in place for yourself or volunteers, or maybe the project that you're going to deliver will involve training some of your service users. So we can look at things like that. Do you need promotional material? Are volunteers involved? Do you need some guidance and help around how to support volunteers in this? And then also there's other important things like the due diligence, like do you need a policy in place? Have you thought about GDPR or safeguarding? So these are things that we can still offer you support and guidance on, and hopefully work with you to do this. We can meet, so whoever you will contact at Advonet, they can meet with you regularly and look at, then support you how you can deliver, how you're going to deliver this project. Set timelines, think of action points or contingencies, like things can come up. I mean, COVID is a massive example, so that can change the way we're working and delivering. And we've got a short timeline, so it's really important to think about these things and think about what we would do if things changed, and if you're using a particular staff member or volunteers, like how we would use to if they went off sick, so what would we do? So there's a range of different things that we can help you to look at. So, like why is it working? Why is it not working? sometimes you might struggle and feel quite worried or stressed. So again, if it's within the limitations on the remit of the fund, we could maybe look at doing some partnership work with you, or co-productions, producing something, or even matching you up with another group or organisation that we feel have applied for similar funding and that can support you and you can talk to and get that bit of peer support from. Monitoring and finances obviously are a key element when you're delivering a project. And the two areas where it's really important to plan and regularly evaluate. So, and it's quite a specific skill, but it can come with training and guidance and experience. So again, this is an area where we can hopefully help you if it's something that you need, maybe looking at creating monitoring systems that are suitable for you and your service and your organisation that you know that will work and help you to collect the information that you need. We can help you to look at the budgets and how you're budgeting and how you're spending, and then also like to review and evaluate and then support with reporting on what you're collecting. You may already be a member of the Leeds Advocacy Network, or but for those that are not a member, I'll just go over what it means, what it involves. So when you sign up to be a member of the Leeds Advocacy Network, you sent out a welcome pack, and as part of that welcome pack, we have different offers to support people to deliver advocacy, which will again be in line with the support that you're receiving with the project that you're delivering. So again, it's around training, maybe doing some outreach work, coming out and doing some surgeries, advocacy surgeries that might work alongside you, or pop-up sessions where we can come out and just offer some information about advocacy, the different types of advocacy. The different types of advocacy we deliver within the Advonet group, which is a really wide range. We can support you with peer support, we mentioned before, arrange meetings if that's what you need, and look at some of the resources that we have around advocacy and self-advocacy especially. At the end of this project, obviously, at the end of the first year, we are looking at organise an event, hopefully in July, but I mean, we haven't got a set date yet. And that's when we will welcome you, invite you to come and speak about the project you've delivered and how it's worked, and your experience of this year. And it's helpful for us to receive this so that it's feedback for us. So and also for people that might be thinking of applying next year. So we're hoping that you'll be able to come back and do that. It'd be really interesting to see if it's increased your access to advocacy. I mean, the main aim of this fund is to help organisations to add or increase their advocacy delivery. And it'd be really good to know how productive it's been. The monitoring obviously will help here, and case studies are a really good way of sort of feeding back. So, if you can capture any case studies, that would be really helpful. For our own monitoring and reporting purposes, it'd be really good to get feedback from you to know that how this fund has benefited you and as an organisation, or as this particular project that you've delivered. Has it increased advocacy? Have you reached those that possibly you didn't before, and those specifically that will benefit the most from it? And this project, I mean, the support that we're offering, it's an option. It's not a requirement, but because what project that you want to deliver and your services, but we have that strong knowledge of advocacy and of different types of advocacy and how it could work, and that's the aim of the project as well. So obviously we're hoping that you will work with us and hoping that you'll feed back as well. And personally, as a self-advocacy manager, advocacy and self-advocacy is a real passion of mine. So I love hearing about if it's worked, and and hopefully it's, you know, it's encouraged people to speak up and become more independent. So thank you.
What stood out for me from the various contributions is the importance of communications. And I think that was stressed at the very beginning by Mary and by Tina. And it strikes me that it's probably the most difficult thing to do. It sounds easy because we all talk, don't we? We all talk to each other. We talk all the time, but actually we don't communicate. And it's hard to do. It's hard to communicate internally because some people want to hear nothing. Let me get on with my job. Thank you very much. And others want to hear more. Why aren't you telling me this? And why do I have to find out that from so-and-so? And then between organizations, it's even more difficult because to some extent, we all have our specialisms. We're all in a little bit of a silo. And it's events like today which bring us together. And I'm a great believer in networking like today and having the opportunity. See, what we missed today is that in the break and at the end of this session, no one's going to stay on and talk to each other. You're just going to go off and press the leave button and that's it. If it met face to face, I can guarantee you, you'd have had 10, 15 minutes mingling and talking to each other. And the benefit of that, in my view, is inestimable. And somehow we need to create that opportunity because we all have a lot in common. We all believe in advocacy. We all believe in voices being heard, particularly from those individuals and communities that are underrepresented. And my personal view is, and I've shared that with the Good Neighbours and others, is that actually, because of the cost of living crisis, which is here and now, advocacy becomes even more important. And the right signposting between organizations becomes even more important. And what we all have to do together is establish the confidence that if X signposts you to Y, that Y has the capacity and the will to do it, to take it on. Absolutely no point signposting somebody to a beleaguered service that can't actually do anything. That's even worse than not signposting you, in my view. So there are a lot of areas, I think, that through this fund, we can explore of how we can work better together and therefore actually improve genuinely the situation for those people who need it most. And that's really, I think, encapsulates what I want to say, but I've stimulated some more thinking from Philip now, which is great. So back to you, Philip.
Bushra touched on the Leeds Advocacy Network and how there are already 10 or 11 organizations, I think, that are part of that group. And part of what we hope will come out of this is that more organizations will, very much as you've described, see how there is that common approach and a real opportunity to work together and take part in not too frequent, but regular meetings at which we can compare experience and so on. So it just feels really important that we make people aware of that, because whether people want to go for this fund or not, I know that everybody here is doing advocacy of one kind or another, and our mission as an organization and our responsibility in the city is to support that. And so those meetings are a way of doing that, and people just need to let us know if they haven't been involved before and they'd like to be involved.